In the vast emptiness of space, something terrible was happening. The void swarm moved like a massive dark cloud, consuming everything in its path. Planetary systems disappeared one after another, leaving nothing but silent, cold space where millions of lives once existed. Captain Junvo Park stood near the large observation window of the Confederation's Central Command Station. His eyes tracked the holographic displays that showed the rapid destruction spreading across the galaxy. Red markers indicated fallen worlds, blue markers showed refugee movements, and green markers represented the few remaining safe zones. The Confederation was losing. Badly. Shunho watched as another planetary system went dark on the massive holographic map. 17 systems had already fallen in just 3 standard galactic cycles. The pace of destruction was increasing, and no one seemed to have a solution. Admiral Yoongi Kim stood beside him, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. The old military strategist had seen countless conflicts, but nothing like this. The Void Swarm was different. It wasn't just an enemy, it was a systematic destruction mechanism that consumed everything in its path. "They're not conquering," Yonji muttered, more to himself than to Juno. "They're erasing." The Void Swarm wasn't interested in resources, territory, or prisoners. It simply consumed entire planetary ecosystems, technological infrastructures, biological entities. Everything was converted into raw material for its continuous expansion. Genetic records showed the swarm had no single origin. It appeared to be a collective of nanomechanical and biological systems that worked with perfect synchronization. No communication could be established. No negotiation was possible. It simply consumed and moved forward. Junho looked at the latest casualty reports. Over 3.2 trillion sentient beings have been eliminated in the last solar cycle. Each number represented entire civilizations, cultures, histories, now reduced to nothing more than statistical data. The Confederation's military was overwhelmed. Their most advanced battleships looked like children's toys against the swarm's adaptive technologies. Energy weapons were absorbed, physical attacks were regenerated almost instantly, and conventional strategies became meaningless. "We have maybe 6 standard cycles before they reach the core systems," Yongi said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of impending doom. Shunho knew what that meant. The core systems contained the most advanced civilizations, the largest populations, and the most critical infrastructure of the Galactic Confederation. If those fell, everything would be lost. Communication channels were filled with desperate messages. Refugee ships moved in chaotic patterns, trying to find safe havens, but safety was becoming a rare commodity in this part of the galaxy. The most frustrating part was Earth. Humanity remained completely unaware of the approaching catastrophe. Their tiny blue planet continued its ordinary existence, with billions of humans going about their daily lives, completely ignorant of the galactic apocalypse that was moments away from their doorstep. Advanced civilizations had long considered humans a primitive, barely noteworthy species. They were technologically young, politically divided, and seemingly incapable of understanding the broader galactic ecosystem. No one believed humans could contribute anything meaningful to the fight. But something about humanity remained unquantified, something that the advanced species couldn't quite understand or measure. Yoongi's communication device blinked with an urgent message. Another border defense had collapsed. The Void Swarm was moving faster than their most advanced predictive models could calculate. "We're running out of time," Yoongi said, his voice a mixture of professional calm and deep underlying fear. Juno watched the holographic map. The dark mass representing the Void Swarm continued to expand, consuming everything in its path. Each consumed system represented millions of lives, thousands of years of civilization, entire evolutionary histories, all erased in moments. The observation deck remained silent. Around them, hundreds of communication specialists, strategists, and military personnel worked with a sense of desperate urgency. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone understood that their civilization was facing total extinction. And yet, somewhere in the vast, unknown regions of space, something was about to change. Something that no predictive model could have anticipated. Something that would redefine the very concept of survival in the galaxy. Humanity remained unaware, but not for long. The Void Swarm continued its relentless advance, unaware that its greatest challenge was about to emerge from the most unexpected place. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this section? The Nevada Research Facility looked ordinary from the outside. Tall chain-link fences, gray buildings, and desert landscape surrounded the complex. Nothing suggested that today would change everything. Dr. Heun Choi was reviewing satellite data when the first warning signals appeared. Something was entering Earth's atmosphere at an impossible speed. Traditional tracking systems couldn't calculate its trajectory. The object crashed about 3 kilometers from the main research building. Dust clouds erupted. Sensors went crazy. Security teams mobilized within minutes, their protocols designed for potential terrorist scenarios, not extraterrestrial arrivals. Heun was different from typical researchers. Where others would hesitate, she moved quickly. Her team was already assembling emergency equipment, radiation detectors, protective gear, communication devices. When they reached the crash site, what they discovered was unlike anything humans had ever seen. The spacecraft, if it could be called that, was not constructed. It was more like a living organism that had been severely damaged. 3 beings emerged from the wreckage. They weren't humanoid in the traditional sense. Their bodies seemed part biological, part mechanical, with translucent skin revealing complex internal structures that pulsed with strange energy. The lead alien looked directly at Heun. Its communication was not verbal, but a complex series of electromagnetic pulses that somehow translated into understandable thoughts. "We are the last," it transmitted. "The Void Swarm will consume everything." Images flooded Heun's mind. Entire planetary systems being erased, civilizations disappearing in moments, a darkness that consumed not just physical matter, but seemed to eat reality itself. Military communications began lighting up globally. Within hours, every significant government and research institution was alerted. The ordinary world of paperwork, coffee breaks, and daily routines vanished. General Mark Rodriguez, head of advanced research, arrived at the facility. His first look at the alien survivors confirmed what intelligence reports had hinted at for years. Humans were not alone in the universe. But this was not a peaceful first contact. This was a warning. The aliens shared critical information. The Void Swarm was not a traditional enemy. It was a collective intelligence that transformed everything it touched into raw material for continuous expansion. No diplomatic solution existed. No peaceful negotiation was possible. Military strategists around the world began analyzing the shared data. What they discovered was both terrifying and strangely exciting. The Void Swarm operated on principles that human science could barely comprehend. Heun's research team worked continuously. They discovered that the alien technology was not just advanced, it was fundamentally different from human understanding. Traditional concepts of mechanics, biology, and energy didn't apply. Global military networks activated with unprecedented speed. Satellite communications buzzed. Research facilities that had been working on separate projects suddenly found themselves collaborating. The aliens were dying. Their biological systems were shutting down. But their mission was clear: prepare humanity for what was coming. Within 48 hours, the world changed. Stock markets fluctuated. Military budgets were redirected. Research priorities shifted overnight. Humanity was about to face its first true existential threat. The 3 alien survivors shared everything they knew about the Void Swarm. They explained how traditional warfare strategies were useless. This enemy didn't think like organic beings. It didn't negotiate. It simply consumed and expanded. "You are different," the lead alien transmitted to Heun. "Your species has potential you cannot yet understand." No one knew exactly what that meant, but everyone felt something significant was happening. As the alien survivors slowly died, they left behind technology and information that would transform human understanding of the universe. Their final act was to provide humanity with a chance, a slim, almost impossible chance of survival. The research facility in Nevada became ground zero for humanity's preparation. Scientists, military personnel, and researchers from every corner of the globe converged, united by a single purpose. They were going to fight. They were going to survive. The Void Swarm was coming, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were made of. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this section? Research teams worked around the clock. The world had changed overnight. What seemed impossible yesterday was now the only path to survival. Hyundai Aerospace became the center of a global transformation. Engineers who once designed commercial aircraft now worked on something entirely different. They combined alien technology with human innovation, creating something entirely new. Commander Seok Jin Lee stood in the massive design chamber. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing complex diagrams of potential spacecraft designs. Each model was more radical than the last. Traditional aerospace engineering rules no longer applied. The alien technology they had recovered was unlike anything humans had ever seen. It wasn't just advanced. It was fundamentally different. Mechanical systems that could reshape themselves. Energy systems that seemed to defy known physics. Biological components that could think and adapt. Global research centers began sharing information at unprecedented speeds. Barriers between military, scientific, and private sectors disappeared. Governments committed resources like never before. The entire human civilization was preparing for something bigger than any single nation. Prototype ships began taking shape. They looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. These were living machines, vessels that could reconfigure themselves mid-battle, adapt to different environments, and respond to threats faster than any human could process. Dr. Heyman Choi's team discovered something extraordinary about human DNA. The alien survivors had hinted that humans possessed unique adaptive capabilities. What seemed like a weakness, human biological diversity and unpredictability, was actually a potential strength. Military training programs changed completely. Soldiers were no longer just trained to follow orders. They were trained to think creatively, to adapt, to become living weapons themselves. Traditional military hierarchies were dismantled. Flexibility became the primary strategy. Satellite networks were upgraded. Communication systems were redesigned. Every technological system on Earth was being transformed to prepare for the coming conflict. Manufacturing centers around the world shifted production. Factories that once made consumer electronics now produced advanced weapon systems. Car manufacturers began creating modular combat vehicles. Every industry became part of the global defense effort. Commander Seok Jin Lee developed new combat protocols that defied traditional warfare strategies. Where alien tactics relied on mathematical precision, human approaches introduced controlled chaos. Unpredictability became a weapon. The first Deathworlder fleet took shape. These weren't just ships. They were living systems that could think, adapt, and transform. Each vessel was designed to be a complete fighting unit, capable of making complex decisions faster than any central command could process. Psychological profiling became crucial. Military researchers discovered that human creativity, emotional intelligence, and ability to make intuitive decisions could be more valuable than pure technological power. Global universities suspended normal operations. Every research facility became part of the preparation. Students who were studying literature, psychology, engineering, and physics were suddenly working together on humanity's survival strategy. The alien technology revealed something profound about energy manipulation. Humans began developing power systems that could generate massive energy from minimal resources, weapons that could transform entire battlefields, communication systems that could penetrate any known barrier. Interestingly, the preparation wasn't just about destruction. The research also revealed potential for unprecedented healing, environmental restoration, and technological advancement. The threat of the Void Swarm was pushing human potential beyond known limits. Commander Lee understood something fundamental. They weren't just preparing to fight. They were preparing to prove humanity's worth to the galaxy. Months of preparation compressed decades of potential technological development. What would have taken generations was now happening in weeks. The entire human species was transforming, becoming something entirely new. The first prototype Deathworlder ships began testing. They moved in ways that defied traditional physics. They could reshape themselves, generate energy from seemingly nothing, and communicate in complex, almost living patterns. No one knew exactly what would happen when the Void Swarm arrived, but humanity was no longer the primitive, divided species it had been just months ago. Something extraordinary was emerging, a species about to show the galaxy what true adaptation really meant. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this section? Space erupted with human firepower. The first encounter shocked every existing galactic civilization. Tactical Officer Ju Park watched the initial engagement from the command deck. Her hands moved across holographic controls with practiced precision. The human fleet looked small compared to the massive Void Swarm formations, but size meant nothing now. The Void Swarm expected predictable resistance. They had consumed thousands of civilizations. Each encounter followed a mathematical pattern of destruction. Humanity would be another statistic. They were wrong. Human ships moved like living things. They didn't follow traditional combat protocols. Where alien tactics suggested straight lines and calculated approaches, human vessels danced. They twisted. They transformed. They attacked from impossible angles. Juwu's first command came sharp and clear. Adaptive configuration. Total system override. The Deathworlder ships responded instantly. Weapon systems reconfigured mid-battle. Energy shields transformed. Entire ship structures reshaped themselves, becoming something between a weapon and a living organism. The Void Swarm's initial attacks passed through empty space. Human ships weren't where mathematical predictions suggested they should be. They moved with an unpredictability that confused the collective machine intelligence. Commander Seok Jin Lee's strategic approach was simple: break every known rule of warfare. Where traditional military thinking suggested defense, humans attacked. Where standard tactics recommended retreat, they advanced. Electromagnetic warfare became humanity's unexpected strength. Human technology, developed in mere months, could penetrate and disrupt the Void Swarm's communication networks. Each attack wasn't just physical, it was a complex digital assault that confused the enemy's collective intelligence. Small human squadrons would suddenly appear in impossible locations. They would strike critical system nodes, then vanish before traditional tracking could even register their presence. It was warfare as performance art, as psychological warfare. The Confederation observers watched in stunned silence. These humans were doing something unprecedented. They weren't just fighting. They were reimagining combat itself. Alien communication networks buzzed with confusion. Reports came in that defied all logical understanding. Human ships were surviving encounters that should have been impossible. They were destroying Void Swarm units with technologies that seemed to break fundamental laws of physics. One human squadron, led by Captain Juno Park, managed to disable an entire Void Swarm sector hub. Their approach involved simultaneously attacking physical systems while introducing complex algorithmic disruptions into the collective intelligence network. The battle wasn't just about destroying ships. It was about breaking the system's fundamental understanding of conflict. Juwoo Park watched as another wave of human ships entered the conflict. Each vessel was unique. Each crew was trained to think independently, to make split-second decisions that no central command could predict. The Void Swarm began to realize something terrifying. These humans were not just another civilization to be consumed. They were something entirely different. Adaptive technologies that had worked for millennia suddenly failed. Predictive algorithms collapsed. The collective machine intelligence found itself facing an enemy that didn't think like a traditional biological or technological system. Humans fought with creativity, with emotion, with an unpredictability that no mathematical model could calculate. By the engagement's third standard cycle, the Void Swarm had lost more units than in the previous 1,000 years of its existence, not through superior technology, but through something far more dangerous: human imagination. The first major galactic conflict involving humanity was changing everything. And no one, not the Void Swarm, not the Confederation, not humanity itself, knew exactly what would happen next. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this section? The final battle lasted 72 hours. Space became a canvas of destruction and unexpected hope. Admiral Yoonji Kim stood on the command deck of the primary human flagship. Her hands remained steady, her eyes focused on the massive holographic displays showing the complex battle formations. The Void Swarm's central hive mind was their ultimate target. Every human ship understood the mission: destroy the core, and the entire collective intelligence would collapse. Confederation observers watched in disbelief. Human ships moved like living creatures, adapting faster than any known technological system. They weren't just fighting, they were rewriting the fundamental understanding of warfare. Small human squadrons penetrated deep into Void Swarm territories. Each ship carried advanced algorithmic weapons designed to disrupt communication networks. Where traditional military thinking suggested massive force, humans use surgical precision. Commander Seok Jin Lee's strategy was simple: attack the mind, not just the body. Human technology could introduce complex disruption patterns that confused the collective machine intelligence. The Void Swarm had consumed thousands of civilizations. They expected predictable resistance. Mathematical models suggested total human destruction within hours. They were wrong. Human ships transformed mid-battle. Weapon systems reconfigured. Energy shields adapted. Entire vessel structures reshaped themselves into configurations that defied traditional physics. Tactical teams worked with unprecedented creativity. Each crew member was trained to make independent decisions. No central command could predict their next move. This was warfare as an art form, as psychological manipulation. Admiral Yoonji Kim's final transmission became legendary across the galaxy. "We are not here to negotiate. We are here to survive." The battle wasn't just about physical destruction. It was about breaking the system's fundamental understanding of conflict. Confederation leaders watched in stunned silence. These humans were doing something unprecedented. They weren't just fighting an enemy. They were completely reimagining the concept of resistance. Smaller human squadrons attacked critical system nodes with precision. They would strike, then vanish before traditional tracking could register their presence. Each attack was a complex dance of technology and imagination. The Void Swarm's collective intelligence began to experience something it had never encountered: genuine uncertainty. Human ships carried more than weapons. They carried an unpredictable spirit of adaptation. Where alien technologies relied on perfect calculation, human systems thrived on creativity and spontaneous decision-making. By the battle's final hours, the Void Swarm was losing more units than in its entire 1,000-year existence, not through superior technology, but through something far more dangerous: human creativity. The central hive mind began to fragment. Complex communication networks collapsed. For the first time in its existence, the collective intelligence experienced something close to fear. When the final assault came, it was not a massive explosion. It was a complex algorithmic attack that systematically dismantled the Void Swarm's core intelligence. Piece by piece, network by network, the collective began to dissolve. Admiral Kim watched as the final systems collapsed. Humanity had done what thousands of advanced civilizations could not. They had stopped the unbeatable enemy. Confederation leaders realized something profound. Humans were not just another species. They were a fundamental game-changer in galactic dynamics. The battle ended not with a massive explosion, but with a quiet disintegration. The Void Swarm's collective intelligence simply stopped. In the aftermath, something unexpected happened. The Confederation invited humanity not as a junior member, but as a critical strategic partner. The galaxy would never be the same. A subtle message remained. More threats would come, and humanity would be ready. The transformation was complete. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this section?